Hi everyone, welcome to Kristen's Epic Adventures. I'm Kristen, and today we're going to be talking about the differences between theater of the mind and using maps and minis in your game. So if you're interested in lots of Dungeons and Dragons and role-playing content, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you know when new videos are posted. Hi everyone, welcome back. So today we're talking about the difference between using theater of the mind and using maps and minis in your game. Now there are benefits and drawbacks to both, and I want to discuss them a little bit. They're both very different experiences, and I actually recommend that you try out both. And there's room for both in your game. I actually recommend a mix of using a little theater of the mind and a little bit of maps and minis, but it's your game and you can play it however you want. Neither is the right or the wrong way. They're just different ways of playing. I want to make sure that's clear. There's no right or wrong way to play Dungeons and Dragons. It's all what is fun for you and your group. So using maps or minis versus theater of the mind can also kind of depend on how technical you want your game to be. But again, I do recommend a mix of both. So let's kind of go over the differences. So theater of the mind is where everyone just imagines everything in their mind. The dungeon master describes how things look. And if you're a dungeon master, I actually suggest you describe how things look, what the players hear, and even what they smell to give them like an immersive experience. Basically, the players are going to just describe to the DM what they would like to do. And now if you're doing all theater of the mind, this includes combat. You just describe what you want to do, and the DM might ask you to make some rolls, and everything is just completely done in your mind. So some pros of this are, it can save you a lot of money if you're not buying a lot of minis or buying terrain or map making supplies or things like that. So it can definitely be less expensive. I think it's actually a really neat thing when players actually imagine things on their own. You can imagine it in your mind the way you want instead of how it looks down on the map. So it's different. It allows everybody to picture it differently in their own mind because we're all different. It also allows really for more of a storytelling experience because you're relying so much more on imagination. You want to be very descriptive. As players, you want to ask a lot of questions. Well, what do I see over there? How does that look? How would you describe this? And it gets you a lot more of the storytelling part of the role-playing. It also tends to be a little less restrictive. I personally think doing theater of the mind for combat goes a lot faster even. Can kind of speed up your game a little bit. Now, I also personally enjoy a good 2-hour combat session as well. That can be a lot of fun too. But doing theater of the mind for combat can really speed things up in the sense of, you may just ask your dungeon master what you see, who's kind of positioned where. You may just give them instructions like, well, I'd like to run up and get into melee with this goblin. And then everyone just assumes you're next to them. There's no looking at a grid or looking at a board and trying to figure out, well, I could move over there but then there's this, and then I'd be over there. So maybe I should go over here. It almost kind of allows for almost less options, but more options at the same time. I guess less tactical options as if you're like playing a board game or something, but more options in the sense of you could describe anything to the DM. You could say, I want to run up and get in melee with that goblin, but you could also say, I want to run up, get in melee of that goblin, but be flanking with my wizard friend on the other side so we can get advantage. Things like that. So it does allow for a lot, I think, for the combat to go a lot faster because there's no moving miniatures around or making decisions. Do I want to move here or move there? So that's kind of a benefit too. Now, normally my group plays in person and we do use maps and minis. But with everything that's going on in the world right now, we've kind of switched over to playing on Discord with voice chat. We've shared some maps back and forth as files and things like that just to kind of get the sense of where you are. But we've been doing everything theater of the mind and it's been working out great. It's been working out just fine. We like it a lot. It's a lot of fun. again, you just kind of want to ask your Dungeon Master a lot more questions. Or if you are the Dungeon Master, you want to provide your players with a lot more information because there's no actual figures to look at. So especially if budget is an issue for you, you can 100% do your entire Dungeons & Dragons game via Theater of the Mind. You can just imagine everything and still have a great time. Please don't think you need to go out and spend a fortune on minis and maps and terrain and things like that to have a good time. Now, that being said, let's go over a little bit of what it is like to use maps and minis. Maybe you're a new player starting out or a new Dungeon Master and you're going to start a new campaign and a new game and you're all excited. You can certainly use maps and minis if you'd like. If you're using a published campaign, there are likely maps included in there. You may not want to put the entire book out in front of your party, but you could photocopy the maps that are in there. Sometimes you can even find them online for download. And things like that. Now, you could even do something like, I also have a dry erase mat that has the 1-inch square grid on it. And you can use dry erase markers to draw something. You could even draw your own maps if you want, if that's something you're really good at. That's something I want to try myself, and we're going to do a video on some map drawing as well. And then as far as minis, the sky is the limit. You can save money and use pennies, tokens, coins, you know, like those little glass tokens that sometimes people put in like fish tanks or something. You can use anything you have around the house that you want to use to represent things, or you can go all out and purchase minis. Now, the minis they sell are not even really that expensive if you're just buying basic unpainted, like, you know, your characters and then some kobolds and some goblins. I've shown on here before some of the minis I've picked up at the store, and they're relatively inexpensive. I think the last pack of goblins I just got, I think I got 3 little goblins for $5. And they are unpainted. You can paint them if you want. That's a whole nother hobby to get into, which can be a lot of fun. So you can go as simple or as elaborate if you want with maps and minis, kind of depending on your budget and things. Now, using maps and minis does make things a little more accurate, especially when it comes to like movement in combat. If you're using a grid, or you can even use a ruler, it does allow for taking measurements and making stuff a lot more accurate. It's really good for complex fights. If you have a very large battle going on with a lot of players and a lot of foes, it'd be really probably very helpful to use a map and some minis. But again, it still doesn't mean you have to spend a lot of money. You can draw it out and use pennies and nickels and dimes and things like that. It also can generate a lot of excitement as well. There's nothing like doing some of the storytelling part and the role-playing part, and then all of a sudden the Dungeon Master just kind of whips out this giant dragon mini, which might not be so mini, depending on how big of a dragon it is, and just plopping it right in front of you guys. It can really generate a lot of excitement, or having them describe that you just got ambushed by a bunch of kobolds and all of a sudden, boop, 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 they plop them down on the map right in front of you. It's kind of make it really very exciting to all of a sudden actually see the creatures that you're going to be fighting right in front of you. Adding maps and minis can also break up the role playing too. If you have groups tend to kind of like a little mix of both. You might find some players that love the role playing and combat's just kind of like, okay for them. Some of them love to do a lot of combat and don't really get into the role playing. So it adds a good mix to be able to do a little bit of both, and being able to do a lot of theater of the mind role playing, and then all of a sudden for some variety and interest kind of bring out a map and some minis. That helps as well. It kind of breaks it up a little bit. So it's sometimes 4 hours of sitting at the table all role playing sometimes it's just not what some players are looking for. So it's kind of neat to add in. Now, there are some companies out there that really do make some amazing terrain props, minis. I will warn you, you can get kind of sucked into buying a lot of stuff if your budget allows. I think it's fun to go out and like buy a bunch of minis and things and paint them. Now, there are also published maps that you can decide to use or not. You can homebrew and make your own maps. And again, there's a whole other hobby of building terrain if that's something you'd like to get into. There's a lot of great YouTube channels out there about building terrain, whether it's out of found objects around your house, like paper towel rolls and empty cereal boxes and things like that, or buying foam core and carving stuff. There's a lot of really great things out there. So I just kind of wanted to give you a little bit of a rundown on the differences between what theater of the mind is and what it's like, and what using maps and minis is like, and kind of give you some information on how you might want to do your game. Again, you can do all theater of the mind if you want, or you can mix it up and do a little bit of both. I'm not really sure as all maps and minis would work, depending on what's going on. I mean, if you're just hanging out in the tavern, it can be certainly fun to have a little scene of a tavern in there for sure. But if you're just saying that your characters are spending a few hours walking down the trail, down the road, and nothing, and it ends up with no encounters and can be a little uneventful, I don't think you necessarily need maps and miniatures for that. So that's why I personally prefer a mix. I'd love to hear back from you guys and hear what you think, whether you like all theater of the mind or whether you like a mix. Have you built any really cool maps and terrain and stuff? And are you into painting the minis? That's pretty fun. I like painting minis. I haven't done it in a little while, and I do have a bunch that need to be painted. But make sure you comment down below and let me know. If you found this video helpful and you liked it, go ahead and share it with your friends, and go ahead and hit the like button for us. And if you're interested in more Dungeons & Dragons and role-playing content like this, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you know when new videos are posted. And we'll see you next time. Bye!